Our Revolution and Bernie Sanders endorsed a Florida candidate by the name of Andrew Gillum. Now, he wasn't polling that well, but he was a candidate that showed promise. So Bernie and Our Revolution rolled the dice on him and decided it's worth it to, Bernie went down there and campaigned for him, and they really tried to get him over the top and make it so that we have another win for the left, another, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez type victory. Well, it turns out that's exactly what happened. Andrew Gillum ended up winning. He won a tough primary this week for Florida governor. He's now the Democratic nominee for Florida governor. And for those of you that don't know Andrew and you're unfamiliar with him, here's a few of his ads and you'll see what he's about.
Were it not for a good public education, caring and loving parents, a grandmother who prayed for me, and quite frankly, people who believed enough in me to say that I could, I wouldn't be the person that I am today, and I plan to work as hard as I can every day if given the opportunity to make sure that every child has that same opportunity.
My mother said the only thing in life you should ever ask for is a chance. So I want you to know that if you give me the chance to not only be your nominee, but to be the next governor of the great state of Florida, that I'm going to make you proud every single day of the week. So I want y'all to join me on this mission, right? And together we're going to take this state back, flip Florida blue in 2018, and flip this country blue in 2020.
What's impossible? The son of a bus driver becoming mayor of the capital city? Or that mayor standing up against the NRA so that guns couldn't be fired in city parks and winning? How about running for governor and being the most progressive Democrat who would invest $1 billion in education and create Medicare for all? Is it impossible to come from nothing, be outspent 10-1, and win? Share this, buy a TV ad, and prove the impossible.
So, furthest left candidate, Bernie Sanders style candidate, ended up winning. It cannot be overstated how important this is. And I think now we're at the point where the establishment is going to realize there's a problem. Because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they acted like it was a fluke. Like, oh, okay, whatever, but this is just, a one-off, and it doesn't really count because it's in the Bronx and Queens, and that's not like the rest of the country, and, hey, I guess it happens from time to time. It happened to Eric Cantor every now and then. An insurgent candidate knocks off somebody who's, a big-time party leader. But it also happened with Kara Eastman in, Nebraska? So it's happening in red states, it's happening in blue states, now it's happening in Florida, and he knocked off an establishment Democrat whose daddy was, I think a well-known corporate Democrat. So it's showing a bit of a trend, and remember, we are at a permanent money disadvantage, so it's almost like there should be a handicapping system that lets you know, oh, okay, if you're at a permanent monetary disadvantage, if you win more than X percentage of your races, you're doing really well. Well, as we've discussed previously, PCCC, very big-time progressive group, 67% of their candidates have won. You have Our Revolution and Justice Democrats, about 35% of their candidates have won. Given the fact that we have next to no money compared to the corporate candidates, that's great. So this is something to really soak up and enjoy, and I hope it's part of a trend. But, we have to keep working in order to win the general elections. It's one thing to win the primaries. Now it's the real test of our philosophy, because Andrew Gillum, being a Bernie-endorsed candidate, he's up against a guy named Ron DeSantis, that's the other guy here, who he's a Trump-endorsed candidate, and he's fully, basking in his Trumpism. He released an ad where his kids were building with toy blocks Trump's wall, and he's not hiding from it. He's not, kind of waffling on it like, say, Paul Ryan does. He's just like, yeah, I'm a Republican and I'm a Trump Republican. He was a big-time Tea Party guy. He ran like a Tea Party Facebook page. So this is a real test because you have the fake populists on the right running against the real populists on the left. So it's Bernie versus Trump. It's a good litmus test for what's upcoming. So a lot of work should go into getting Andrew Gillum elected because it's not even a close... It shouldn't be close, all things being equal. That's the best way to phrase that. And we'll see what happens moving forward. I will add one tiny note of caution here about Andrew Gillum. There's one fact about him that really put me off a little bit, and it's that in the primary in 2016, he actively endorsed and supported Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. See, to me, that's a telltale sign that he could be faking it and he's full of shit. Because you want to talk about the ultimate non-question? It was Hillary versus Bernie was a non-question to anybody who actually gives a shit about populist left policies. So in other words, you had Hillary Clinton, somebody who was for the Iraq War, somebody who was for the intervention in Libya, somebody who was for the Patriot Act, somebody whose record was reliably on the wrong side for every important vote. She didn't support gay marriage until 2013. You had a litany of horrendous decisions. She supported Wall Street deregulation. Her husband signed NAFTA, and she was on board with that, which outsourced so many jobs. He signed the repeal of Glass-Steagall. Again, she supported that. She didn't support bringing it back for, when she was running against Bernie, and Bernie said we should bring it back. She was like, I don't know about that. So, that was the ultimate litmus test as to whether or not you're real. Because it's a non-question if you're real. You go, well, obviously Bernie Sanders over Hillary Clinton. This is like asking Bernie Sanders or Joe Manchin. Like, it's very close to that. And unfortunately, he failed that test. So what that tells me is that on some level, he's a careerist. And he was just trying to, get ahead. And he's smart enough to realize what's working now. And he's smart enough to realize that the energy in the party is on the left. And that you're not going to win if you're not for Medicare for all. And he understands that Republican light doesn't win elections. He gets that much. But the question is, how married is he to these policies? And I'm just cautious now because to fail that test, Bernie versus Hillary, that just tells me that you were more concerned about your career going forward than you are about the policies, because to endorse Hillary over Bernie is a raw Machiavellian move. Like, oh, okay, I'm relatively certain she's going to win, so I'm just going to throw my lot in with her because I don't want to be ostracized in the Democratic Party when she does eventually win. Like that's that thinking. That's what he was doing. And, I honestly wouldn't even be going after him if he pulled, say, an Elizabeth Warren, where Elizabeth Warren stayed out of it when it was Bernie versus Hillary. I don't agree with Elizabeth Warren, and I still think that's kind of Weasley and Machiavellian because she obviously agrees more with Bernie. But I wouldn't even be faulting him if he just stayed out of it and then in the general endorsed Hillary. That would have been fine. But to actively endorse Bernie over Hillary, Hillary over Bernie over Hillary would have been the right thing. To actively endorse Hillary over Bernie is like, dude, what have you done? And listen, that does show you something else about Bernie too. It's that he's willing to, if he thinks somebody has changed, or if he thinks somebody now agrees with him, he's not going to fault that. He's not going to fault them. Because who was campaigning with Andrew Gillum? It wasn't Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton wasn't doing Dickie McGee's acts. Bernie Sanders went down there and, whipped up support for Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum is now effusively praising Bernie Sanders and saying, hey, we couldn't have won without you. It's because of you, and it's because I'm a candidate that's molded after you. That's why we won. So, listen, it's very possible that now he genuinely agrees with Bernie and is like, oh no, these are the right policies. That's certainly possible. And even if that's not the case, he's still the better candidate. Don't get me wrong. But I just have a few reservations. I want to see him win. I support him 100%. I hope everybody works hard and tries to get him elected. I hope he crushes DeSantis. I just have a little bit of caution about him because that's a sign that he could be a bullshitter. But to the extent he actually believes what he's pushing, well, then he's a superb candidate, and Bernie trusts enough to say, yeah, I think he's real. And there wasn't a question as to whether or not he was the furthest left candidate in the primary. He was. So, I want to see him win. I want to see him crush DeSantis. And I just hope that if/when he gets elected, he really continues to, push the proper policies and really fight to get them implemented. I don't want to see him become, more like Bill Clinton or more like Barack Obama, where it's like, oh, okay, I sounded somewhat progressive on the campaign trail, but now that I'm elected, negotiation and compromise and middle ground. And did I say Medicare for all? I meant public option, because that would annoy me. But I should reserve judgment. And all I can say for sure is he's the best candidate, and Bernie trusts him. And this is a big win for the left, because like I said, he's an Our Revolution candidate. He's a Bernie Sanders candidate. And he won. Furthest left candidate in the primary, he won. So now we're going to have somebody who's populist left versus somebody who's Trump-style right. And man, it should be interesting to see how that goes.